and we're live on Facebook. So without any further ado, all of the people watching this in all of the spaces, this is the lovely Kyra. And Kyra's here to just share all of her light wisdom, like experience, and just all of the yummy juiciness that I've only gotten to experience like this much, you all, like so far, like this much. And we're going to talk a little bit, obviously, about how we met and the community that we belong to in Austin and some of the things that we've been up to. But the real main focus of this discussion today is not only us learning more about Kyra as an amazing human, but also about what Kyra is bringing to the space in terms of education, because it shouldn't be missed and it should be heard. There's an amazing transforming wellness Trans 101 course that I have added the link to on Facebook. It will also be on YouTube. And I'm going to add the URL to just the main part of the website where you can easily find the training in the pinned comment. I'm actually going to do that here in a moment, as well as Kyra's Venmo. So please, anything that you usually send to me, because every week there are always a couple of you in here that send me some amazing donation money, which is greatly oh, you're hearing me. Oh, like you're hearing an echo of me? Okay, we will work on that in a moment. But all of the people who usually send me money, please send it to Kyra. Kyra deserves it, has been doing so much work for the community. And please send it that way. So I'm not even including mine in the chat. You all usually have it. If you want it, I'm not going to make it easily accessible because I'd rather you send the money here. So while I'm typing all of this in, Kyra, I know you're probably working with tech and things, but I would love for you to introduce yourself. Tell us anything you'd love to start out with, because there's so much we want to dive into. But I would love for you to just kind of lay the groundwork for all of these amazing people who may not know who you are.
There we go. Okay. Hi, Kyra. She, her, or they, them pronouns for me. Let me know if the echo's better, please. I'm not tech savvy.
It sounds good.
Okay. So yeah, I teach transforming wellness. It's one of the many hats that I wear. I also I'm teaching a Trans 101 class this Saturday about the working title of it was How to Not Be an Asshole to the Trans People in Your Life. Because, like,
valid.
Yeah. And it just originally started because I was doing a ton of emotional labor for the friends and family in my life. And, like, I didn't want to not do it because then I would have to continue dealing with the idiocracy of just, no offense to everyone here, but the idiocracy of cis people is frustrating. But also so that, I could be adequately paid for my emotional labor. Like, I made a slideshow and the whole 9 yards, and, like, I have lecture points and jokes and puns all throughout the rest.
And stories, I'm sure. And stories, I'm sure.
Oh, yes. You know me, I love my stories. But, yeah, so that's kind of my main job at the moment. Before the Rona, I was a massage therapist for 10 years. You kind of can't really touch people and social distance at the same time. Doesn't really work.
Yeah, it's hard. It's rough out here.
Yeah.
And I just love that. I feel like you've also chosen this time to, I feel like it would be a mistake to think that during Corona you've stopped a lot of your healing work in that way, because I feel like you've just taken a deep dive. And so I know that's not the forefront of the topic for here today, but I would love for everyone just to hear about all the exciting things of how you've been expanding and creating new offerings and tapping into new skill sets.
So I was offered a free ride through a trauma-informed yoga teacher training taught by predominantly POC, all queer staff.
Amazing.
So, like, right up my alley. It was fantastic. I was so happy whenever they told me. And that started in January. And then we were supposed to finish in May, but then Corona happened, and we had to transition to online. And then we just powered through that. And now, like, I'm done, and I'm doing yoga and teaching yoga and offering free yoga to queer people. because we need it.
Yes. And like Austin needs it specifically as well. I feel like there was, for being considered such a progressive city, we had none of that, and none of that representation really in the wellness world, and nobody teaching those classes and centering those folks.
And like I like to say that Austin's progressive if you're white and cisgender.
100%.
Like I was
100%.
born and raised here. I grew up in South Austin. Like I know it is not a progressive city.
Yeah. I mean, we're totally viewed that way 100%, but not like actually when you live here.
Who are we viewed that by though?
Exactly. Well, it's mostly like, for lack of a better term, with no offense intended, like hipster young, or like older middle American, also white people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's all about who's talking.
Yeah. And I feel like I did know that you were born here, but I forgot that you were like in the South Austin crew. I feel so like lonely down here sometimes because all the people that I like am usually with are all the way up in the north, on the north side, and I'm on the south side down here. I know Sarah's in the comments like, y'all are taking me to church right now, because Sarah's also like, yes, I know this is awesome.
Oh no, Sarah has listened to me talk about this ad nauseum. It's been a whole thing.
Yeah, it's like it's definitely a continuing problem, but I'm super happy to have you in that space. And just a couple of weeks ago, I spoke about this when I was announcing this live, that I had the honor of joining the Transforming Wellness team, which was made up of people who I had like heard amazing things about or already knew they were amazing, and really kind of, I just always blame Cable for everything. I'm always like, Cable just drives me places. And I basically Cable is, he calls himself like my gay uncle, like brother, dad. And anything he tells me to do, I'm just going to do it because he knows what's best for me and because I love him. And he's responsible for pretty much my entire like wellness career. But yes, Cable tells me to teach yoga for Black people. And I'm like, oh my God, of course I need to teach yoga for Black people. But Cable was also like, hey, you should come to the Transforming Wellness team and talk to us about intersections of race and gender. And I'm like, okay, I'm doing it. Okay. All right. And heard amazing things about you, heard amazing things about Kelly for so long. I mean, met Kelly in very short stints, and then also like obsessed with Rocky from afar for so long. And so just getting to be in the presence of you all, even just in our meetings before the training, was hugely transformative for me as someone who, you know, people might look at as being incredibly aware, and grounded in a lot of like gender, not only gender studies, but like concepts. I take those opportunities all the time just to sink myself into the knowing of the lack of understanding that I have as someone who is not trans, but also into, like we talk about a lot in our training, the fact that competency is never going to happen, and that it's really just the humility of understanding that I am in a continuous learning process. And I just get a wealth of knowledge every time I'm around all of you. So doing the first training together was like I felt like a cannonball of just like amazing energy and light. Like that was such an invigorating day to sit with all of those people and to have these deep discussions. And I know that it was like the third or fourth time for you running that training, but I feel like that time was like different. Yeah,
it was definitely different. The first two times we did it, it was just me and Kelly going through all of that, and that's exhausting for two facilitators. Sarah actually took our first one, which was the only one we did in person. And then the third time we added Rocky, and then the fourth time we added you and Cable, and it's so nice to have multiple viewpoints on things, and we have like really close to like the entire gender spectrum, quote unquote, in the class, because we have, you know, me, a trans feminine person, we have a trans masculine non-binary person, and we have a trans guy. All we need is like a Black trans woman, and we're set.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. Where are you? I'm like trying to like pull people in. Yes.
Yeah. It was last time. It was actually like really invigorating. Usually, I'm like exhausted. I need to like take an Epsom salt bath, drink probably more tequila than I should after just cause.
Yeah.
But this time it was It was just like, no, let's like be involved. This is interesting. I like this. Also, that paycheck was wonderful. It was nice being paid the same as a cis white man.
It's so true. I think that not only is it the amazing sense of dividing labor, like emotional labor, which is something that we don't talk about very often, of like not taking that brunt on yourself and collective teaching, but yeah, my partner Kim just left a couple of hours ago and literally like gave me the instruction of every time you price something, I need you to think of what would a cis white man charge for this. And then like, because we were just talking about how like I was doing a bunch of shit for free. Like she was just like basically reprimanding me and being like, you are not allowed anymore to do anything for free. And I know this, but it's once again just like that process of checking yourself as like someone who exists in a marginalized space of like, there are people who have less knowledge than me and definitely less experience than me that are charging so much more for this. And the friction, the emotional friction that comes up when you're like fearful of actually getting paid and then realizing like it can happen like in a comprehensive way where it works out for everyone. It's amazing and groundbreaking.
I mean, and it can be regular pay too.
For sure.
Like that, like, so for workshop stuff, like as I'm sure you know, like we get paid and it's usually like a decent amount for like a very little amount of time in front of the people, but there's a whole ton of prep work that has to happen. And then you don't use that skill again for like 6 months or whatever, which is something that we're trying to not do. Like, we're doing monthly classes at this point now.
Yeah, I think that's also something that people don't quite understand about this type of education as well, is that it's not just regular curriculum writing in terms of like, you know, planning an outline, prep work, research, compiling your thoughts, creating a structure and a container for how to deliver the information, and like thinking of all of those things. But it's also like the emotional labor of having your values interwoven, your personal stories interwoven, your experiences, which is part of the education and work like this, interwoven into the topics, and then also putting yourself into the space of vulnerability, which is something that I love that we spoke about a lot, is that like we were all kind of coming correct into the space of vulnerability, and speaking together. Sorry, I got a robocall. And we're coming into the space of vulnerability together and speaking together, to be able to be called out and called in and embraced, and in an ongoing process of accountability with the shift and change of things that you might not have known. And it was nice to see people discover new information about gender that they will blatantly just be like, I had no idea, and feeling safe enough to say that in the space, and brave enough to like communicate and ask questions. I think that was really powerful, especially right now with the conversations of race and gender, because I feel like people get so tiptoey that then we end up not having the conversations, and that's an issue.
Yeah, there is definitely an argument to be made that, like, I know you're familiar with this argument of white people should do race work with white people and cis people should do gender work with cis people, but at the same time, the cis person's never going to know what it's like to be trans.
Exactly.
You can literally have a doctorate in gender studies and be teaching on it for 30 years and you will still never know what it's like to be trans.
Exactly. Which is why it's insulting when people question your education or experience level when doing this type of work, which is something that I've spoken about on this live, about anti-racism initiatives, but also something that I know we've all spoken about in general in our meetings and such, of just like why it's insulting when people feel the discomfort of wanting to learn, or learning something new, and then they automatically start like, you know, their ego kicks in and they're like, well, why are you the one teaching me? And who are you to say this? And it starts to, once again, we start to fall back into relying on that like super racist bias educational system, to prove to us how much someone knows, when really it's like, how would I know better other than living the experience day to day all the time in this changing climate?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To quote my grandmother's hands, it's the clean paint versus the dirty paint.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is like, I hate doing the equatism of racism versus transphobia, but like it's two sides of the same coin. Like, or to quote Cable, oppression is a D20.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like
multifaceted.
It's multifaceted, and it's two sides of the same coin of it being systemic, and it's not just about like saying something disrespectful to someone or saying. I think that's been the misconception a lot, is that people really get stuck in the feelings or the morality of like, am I right? Are you wrong? And it's really just about the fact of like caring about the group and understanding empathy and understanding that you're really not learning about life whatsoever. You're selling yourself short by just completely disregarding the fact that there's something happening here. And there's, I don't even like calling it a shift, because then it leads people to believe that like this is a new idea. And I think that's what I've seen a lot as someone who's not trans. I've seen a lot of impressions of people just being like, well, this is all just new, and it's a lot of new information, and it's a lot to take on because it's new. So I would love like to hear your thoughts on that.
That's some lovely white supremacy.
It's just new. It's just new.
No, it's not new. It's just new to you because you're brainwashed into Western fucking culture. Also, I assume cussing is okay here?
Oh my God, yes. If it weren't, I would already be, I would have no followers. But yeah, it's fine.
Because like, so I'm a quarter Cherokee. I'm obviously very white passing, as you know, everyone can tell. And with our nation, we actually recognize multiple genders outside of the binary too. And like, I grew up knowing that, and I was just like, okay, cool, that's a thing. Like, and it changes. It can change weekly or daily. Like, that's just how it is. Then me being like put into Western society of, no, you must be one or other. I'm like, nah, I'm good, bro.
Yeah. I'm cool.
But like, yeah, I have lots of angry feelings about the whole, it's all new when it's not actually new. You're just not bettering yourself as a human.
Yeah.
Which is why I teach this class.
Exactly. Which is why I think it's so so specifically speaking to, oh my gosh, sorry. I got a robocall and then they hung up before I could even decline the call. So something that I really want to say about this space as well is that like, I find that even in kink and rope is that there are so many well-meaning people, so many who are like very, very intentional about trying to be inclusive, but honestly don't have the roadmap and are fearful to ask for it, because there's that weird place where I know I've had a lot of conversations with people recently who are hesitant to reach out to me for the same reasons, with like emotional labor and anti-racism discussions or initiatives, of people just not wanting to reach out for help, not wanting to initiate the conversation in fear of putting too much emotional labor on their trans friends or community, but also not being sure who to ask outside of that realm. And so everyone's like kind of just skating on thin ice and like flying by the seat of their pants. And so what I really loved about this is that, as you said before, yeah, we shouldn't be putting all of the emotional labor to fix this problem on the trans community. But when there is a trans educator, you better pay them and you better go to their class. And I just think that it is an amazing opportunity to get a virtual experience that you offer regularly, that you are incredibly competent and grounded in, and have like an amazing and beautiful way of communicating, of like a basis 101. Like, you're not trying to get a gender study. So, I mean, in the basis, I feel like what we did in our whole transforming wellness training was still like basis. Like, it was like the very thin, like layer over the top of like kind of just skimming the surface of all the areas for you. And I love the fact that you do an entire like just trans 101, like very amazing vocab, imagery, visuals, like slideshow discussion, and creates a space to really have this conversation. I just think it would be such a disservice for people not to take advantage. And it looks like someone's asking if there's an age limit.
Yeah, I just saw that. We do go over crime statistics against people, and we do talk about things like the trans panic defense. So I generally don't recommend people coming under the age of like 16 until they can start having those like more challenging conversations.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. I'm thinking about maybe hosting one for younger folks, but I think at that point, like, that would be more the responsibility of a therapist type situation if they're going to have these conversations, because I don't think I'm equipped enough for that kind of a dialogue.
For like a personal dialogue, for sure. And I love that that came. I love that that came up in our last training. We actually had a lot of people in the last training that like worked in schools, worked with children of elementary age that were asking, and moms, yes, also and moms who were discussing their own children or their children's friends and like not being sure about what types of conversations they should have. And I know that we all kind of went on a tangent after we went. So I would love to just hear, I know that you were speaking specifically that your training is not meant to be like a trans therapy or like consulting on your own personal gender and like understanding, but I'm curious as to like I know your thoughts, but I'm curious for you to share with everyone else your thoughts on talking to younger children about this.
Children are generally less brainwashed by society. Like, I have 4 nieces from my sister, my older sister, and like the oldest one's like 5 or 6. And like after I'd come out as trans last year, and I went to like our first holiday event together, she was like, "Why don't you used to?" And I'm like, "Well, it's because I'm not a boy anymore. I used to identify as a boy, but I'm not a boy anymore." And like we had an actual dialogue about it, and she was just like, "Okay, cool. Look at that." And I'm like, "Awesome."
Yeah.
Yeah, like kids, you should be having these conversations with kids.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Yeah. It's like stopping the rollover effect, or I don't know what we need to come up with like a word for that. I don't know. I just call it different every time I talk about it, but everyone seems to know what I'm talking about, where it's like you have to catch them later in life and start dismantling all the crap that they started to build up from the time that we might have even, you know, we instill this, y'all, from, I mean, our culture instills this from like birth. I mean, it's like gender reveals. Yeah, gender reveals and just all the stuff that I see on my end of birth work. And I'm like, why are we doing this? Why are we already buying all pink toys? Why are we making all of these assumptions? And just like the fact that so many children, yeah, usually the conversation with them is very much like, okay, like they just get it. Like it's not like a learning bridge for them.
Yeah, well, also I think one of the reasons why is because a lot of adults tend to do the whole gender equals biological sex. I'm using air quotes because that's just a term that should never be used.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And, you know, generally with kids, they don't necessarily have those assumptions about those things.
Yeah. Yeah, that was also a question that came up that I felt was a very good topic, was a very good thing to bring up for people who don't know and for people who maybe haven't had that breakthrough as well of just like really understanding that, because they're so inherently connected that I have watched it, and I'm sure you have more than I have, where people just have that like aha moment where you're like, oh, but gender and sex are like not the same thing. They're not synonymous. Like they don't mean the same things. And I really like how you explain like the between your ears type of thing.
Yeah. Gender is between your ears, sex is between your legs. Also, someone asked, is there a good way to talk about trans person pre-transition period of time? Use their current name and pronouns, even if it's before they came out as trans, even if it's before they knew they were trans. Always use their current name and pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
And don't be afraid to ask, too.
Yeah.
I think it's,
like I do know a couple of people who are gender fluid, which means that their gender expression and gender identity can change from day to day and, you know, so on and so forth, who are okay with that. But that is definitely a thing that you would want to talk to them about and be like, hey, how should I refer to you in the past tense? Also, we cover this in my class.
Yeah. Yeah. Come on Saturday. And if for some reason you're looking at your calendar and you're like, oh my God, Saturday, I already have something. Keep your eyes on the transformingwellness.net site because they are consistent. They will be posted. And it's a great thing just to be telling people about because I think these trainings have been doing amazing. Like since they've started, they have been doing amazing. There's no reason why there aren't twice as many people in that, especially the fact that we're doing this over Zoom. If these were still happening in person, of course, there are limits. But the fact that we're doing this over Zoom, there's no reason why we can't be tapping out a Zoom call with all this information. I'm not saying that, you know, Kyra would love like 200 people all the time. But we would figure out a way to manage the load of the amount of people. Yeah, exactly. That matches that emotional labor, labor receipt. But I think that there's no reason why so many people, I mean, I think everyone can get something out of this, even if it's just better vocabulary and language around communicating with someone that you love, or making sure that, you know, you are able to then teach and pass on the information to people in your lives, or pass on the information for this training to people in your lives who you know need this information, whether it's for their own children, their children's friends, themselves, their friends, their partners, and there's so much more coming from Transforming Wellness. I'm just going to tell you now that if you're one of those people who like bookmarks this and forgets it for like 6 months, we are going to have so many other like extended trainings that really you're going to want to have already taken Trans 101 as like a bare minimum before you even want to take any of the other things where we're discussing intersections, where we're really, you know, diving deep into all of the nooks and crannies and questions and things that come up, and things that we've already personally discussed in our meetings. And you're going to want to keep this going on this train of like compiling your information. So when I'm getting all these DMs about like, how can I make sure that my content, my classes, my education, that my conference, that all of the things that we're exactly, that all of these spaces are aware and have not only cultural humility but gender humility. These are the ways. Like, this is exactly. And if I keep getting those DMs, I'm just going to start like only responding by pasting the link, because
you already do that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I try to give look, all of y'all who are sitting in my DMs right now know that I haven't been answering you because I haven't had the spoons to give personal messages, but usually I'm like, hey, and I try to give like a personal correspondence. I don't just be like, here's the thing. But that's why you haven't been getting answers from me, is that I don't have the spoons. I don't have the spoons at this exact moment. And I might just start pasting links to y'all. I might just start pasting links to, you know, booking a call with me, because that's like half of my day. If I were to actually take out the time to go through my DMs on all the accounts, like that's like half my work day. Yeah, I don't think people realize that.
I just respond with links at this point.
Yeah.
Because like with the Transforming Wellness stuff, like as soon as, you know, the protests got big, whenever, you know, the rich white people started noticing them.
Yes.
People were like in my DMs about it, and they were like, oh, what's critical race theory? What is all of this information that I've, you know, haven't heard about before today? What's all this new stuff? And I'm like, here's a link. Here's a link why, you know, POC people need spaces without white people, and just like basic shit like that.
Yeah, usually the stuff specifically about race, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but I really have and will, and many a times everyone knows I respond with Google is free. Because it is free, and everything that you're asking me, you could literally copy and paste into that little Google search and see what comes up, and spend a couple hours doing that. And then I'm sure you will stumble upon a resource that is a book, or, you know, yeah, I like that, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you are not entitled to my time, my education, my effort. And on that, oh yes, experiences, exactly. And on that note, I would love to like chat with you a little bit about your experience with Kink, and on this side of things, because that's something that I feel like we both have been, and this is a whole conversation for later, but we both have been talking about how we are just no longer code switching, like death to the code switch talent, which is really hard for my ego, because that's a skill set that I spent 30 years perfecting. So now that I'm in year 31, I'm like, hey, gonna burn this to the ground. And I love that in that effort to no longer code switch, I am just really open and out with all of the things that I do, in every space. And so I love that we met in the vanilla world, and we very easily stumbled through the conversation of wellness very quickly onto Kink. So I would love to hear about like your experience with Kink, and as much or as little as you would love to share.
So when I was first getting into Kink, that was whenever I was living in Houston. I moved there for a boy I was dating at the time. It was not a smart idea. I don't suggest anyone ever do that. In typical gay boy fashion, I stumbled into pup play, which is a fantastically fun kink, especially if you just have like emotions you need to burn off. You need to like finish that trauma response with the like aggression. Like it's great. And then from there, I, you know, stumbled into rope play and voyeurism, and then that led me into sex work, specifically camming mostly. I also used to used to be a sugar baby, would do photo sets, non-sexual personal escort stuff. I would literally just be like the pretty person on your arm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that paid the best. Oh God, I miss River Oaks. Yeah.
Everyone's like, I feel like I know because I see the list of who's in here. There are at least 5 people in here that are like the good old days, like as you're rattling off all of these things.
Hey, Zilla.
Hey. Oh yeah, River Oaks. See, I know. I'm from Houston too, y'all. I know. Trust. I know exactly what y'all are talking to. But I love that. And I love that you got it. It opened the door for you to like stumble into a lot of things. And like, and you mentioned before that sort of like when you were in the Houston phase of life, you were still in like, I guess, did you say like gay boy fashion or like, I thought of gay boy mode, but like you were in like gay boy fashion. Okay.
When I was living in Houston, I wonder if I've met them at a party. Since family lives in River Oaks.
Probably not.
But yeah, so what was that?
I was saying probably not, possibly just because with their in-laws, I'm not, who knows? But who knows? So
I was arm candy at the Houston Grand Opera a lot.
I was about to say, who knows? You probably rubbed elbows with a bunch of people that, yes.
But yeah, so whenever I was living in Houston, I did identify as a gay/bisexual man, just because it was easiest to just do that. Yeah, and so in typical gay boy fashion, the first kink I tried was pup play because that's, what all of the gay boys do. Like, seriously, get on Grindr, half of them are
pups. And you said before, like, that was, like, sort of the easiest thing to do, and I'm curious about, like, that thought.
So I had some friends in Houston that were into pup play, and they used to go to this bar all the time called Ripcord, which was the gay leather bar in Houston. Oh, sorry. And so I just started going around there, started going to pub night, hanging out. Apparently my obsession with scalp massage was because it's like head scratches for a dog, not because like I actually like my scalp being rubbed. Yeah, and that was the whole thing. It actually really helped me out a lot with a lot of my personal boundary things because I was such an awkward little bean back then. And then actually a lot of the pups in Houston were also littles with ABDL kink stuff. And then I started going into that. So background on me, I don't have any memories before the age of 12 due to some brain damage from when I was in high school here in Austin, got beat up by a bunch of guys for being the queer kid in school. So I have brain damage stuff from that. And so then I started getting into age play to kind of help me like nurture my inner child that was not present because no memories, like, and I don't,
yeah. No, that's beautiful. I love that as like a reclamation journey, of really paving that out for yourself, because I think that we talk a lot, especially I talk a lot on this channel about reclamation, but also like trauma and how really we are playing with our trauma in a safe and controlled environment in order to like almost like program positive like synapse response in those spaces. And yeah, I love the ideas in hearing those thoughts around really utilizing, even before we knew we were doing it, utilizing that space, that safer space, and that brave space to like step out and really reclaim a part of your life for yourself, whether it's like stepping into control, or stepping into releasing control, or stepping into being nurtured. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, and also like the whole releasing control thing is like one of the best power trips you can ever have.
Oh, 100%. That's my Virgo jam. Like people think, I mean, when people get like the stars in their eyes of like, oh, you're submissive. And I'm like, it's really because I'm the one who gets to control who I submit to and when and for how long, and I get to give it up. So if I get to give it up, then really I'm the one in control, because like, I don't know if I could really handle, you know what I mean? It's like just nice power play with yourself, not even the other person. Just nice power play with yourself and your own sensations. Did you find that was fulfilling for you?
Oh yeah. So a little bit about me. My star sign is Aries, and like half of my other planets are in Aries, including my Venus. So I will not be aggressive. So like I tried doing the whole like, oh, I'm a dom thing for a bit there because of my whole like internalized bottom phobia. I don't know.
Yeah. That's real.
And then I subbed for the first time for a dom who actually respected safe words and stuff, and I was just like, oh, this is nice.
Like, oh, different. Yeah. Like, this is different. This is a whole different experience. Yeah. That's amazing.
And then also, like, navigating kink world as, like, someone who's on the asexual spectrum is also really interesting. Because everyone's just like, oh, yes, the orgasm at the end is the best. And I'm like, not really. Like, it feels good, but that's not my goal. Like, tie me up and make me feel helpless, please.
Yeah. I'm like, the best part is when I'm suffering. It's not always.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's the comfortable space. That's the comfort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel that.
Also,
I love that.
Yeah, and the also navigating sex work spaces as someone who's like a licensed clinical massage therapist is a whole thing too. Because there's such a stigma around like professional massage. I'm doing air quotes because all massage is professional, even if it's sex work. It's just kind of professional. Get off your high horse. Yeah. And also, like, that was a whole thing. Like, I kept those two parts of my life very separate for a very long time just because I was like, well, I can't have any of our viewers on Chatterbait know that this is what I do for a living because they might come in. I think at the peak of our camming arm being mine and my partner's, we had, like, 20,000 followers on Chatterbait.
Ooh.
And, yeah, no, we had a ton on Twitter, too. Oh, another sex work thing I do. I paint nude portraits.
Wait, what? Tell me, why did I know this about you? I feel like I
have 15 hats.
I need to see. I need to know all of these things. Tell us more. Tell us more, Kyra.
So it started off. This is actually really funny. You're gonna love this. I was on Grindr one day, as many of my fantastic stories start. And I was like working on my portraiture because I'm a watercolorist.
Yeah.
And I was like working on my portraiture stuff, and I was like, I need to work on flesh tones. Flesh tones are weird, like because there's so many nuances in the colors and the tones and the shades and all of that. And I was like, I just need a lot of pictures of a lot of different kinds of skin. So I got on Grindr on a Friday night, changed my profile picture, and that like puts you in the like new featured category.
Yeah. You say you don't know about tech, Kyra.
Hey, there's a difference between knowing about tech and knowing about dick. Okay? Those are two very different things.
I love it.
And like I put on my bio, like I have a friend who's an intellectual property lawyer, and I ran this by him first. I was like, hey, if I just put on my Grindr bio that if you send me nudes, I'm going to post them on the internet for money. Like, would that count as consent of use?
Yeah.
And he was like, fuck yeah, that's totally good.
Yes, it would.
Awesome. So I did that, and I got like 15 nudes from like 8 different people. And I was like, I'm going to pay these. I posted them on my old sex work Twitter.
Oh my God.
Well, originally Tumblr, because it was before the
Yes, before the exile, R.I.P., yes.
Yeah. And then people just like started approaching me and were like, how much? And I was like, for what? And they're like, to paint one of my pictures. And I'm like, $1 a square inch? Like on paper, not like measurements because straight men can't measure to save their lives. Yeah, so now I do that, and I've actually have quite a nice repertoire. I can send you my commission page.
Yes. And not to mention, I think I need shit painted. Like I gotta inquire. I gotta knock on the door. Like I am definitely a future customer. If that isn't weird, but I want to see. I want to know. Yes, that is amazing. And thank you for also just naturally segueing into the hustle culture of the fact that like something I want to point out here. because you're blowing everyone's minds in these fucking comments. Everybody's like,
oh,
holy shit.
It makes me like anxious.
Like everyone's like, holy shit, this is fucking amazing. You're amazing. I think everyone's finally like tapping into the glorious Kyra magic. And I'm like, y'all, I wasn't lying. I wasn't lying when I said that this was going to be magic. But also I just want to tap into the reality of like, I love the kink space because there are so many sex workers in the kink space, and sex workers understand hustle in a way that like, you know, is on my level, like where I'm just like, yes, let's talk about how we can hustle through this. But I think that the hustle is unique for marginalized sex workers as well. And even marginalized kinksters, even if you're not like, you know, turning profit or you're figuring out a way for this to work for you in terms of money. I think that hustle game looks so different. And so when people are seeing all the things that you're doing and they're like, oh my God, this is genius. And it's like, but this was literally just like the base level of not only your intuitive skill sets, but also like you just making your way and arriving into this beautiful, beautiful space where you took what you had and you made it work for you. You had lemons and you like made lemonade, which is what my grandmother always used to say, which is what Beyonce's grandmother apparently always used to say, that life is always going to give you lemons. Life is going to give you lemons every corner that you turn. And usually the lemons are not because life is just giving them to you. They're usually how other people are responding to your life, or where the lemons come from. And that like you just like have found this beautiful way of expressing yourself and also of staying true to yourself. And like on the note of authenticity, I know that we just spoke before we went live about how we were both in this journey of like taking the wool out from people's eyes and just being authentic in all of these spaces. So I love that there were people who came in here who knew you, but then learned new things about you in this chat, and people who came in here and didn't know you at all and now get to like witness your amazingness. And I'm curious about like how the liberation process personally and like the rebirth process, if any, that you have been sensing and feeling as a result of like burning down the code switching.
It's definitely very anxiety inducing because I'm great at compartmentalizing things. Like, massage therapist brain is over here, like that's the vault of information I can't share with anyone because HIPAA stuff, but then like sex worker brain's over here, which is kind of similar because I don't talk about my clients to people because, you know, people don't pay you for the orgasm, they pay you for the pillow talk.
Absolutely.
Like especially during this time.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how it is. And yeah, it's mostly anxiety inducing, but also it's very liberating, especially since I'm taking a step back from massage world, because I'm like, oh wait, I don't have a governing entity to like dictating whether or not I can work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been really big, like a really big, awesome, powerful thing for me. Because like to be a yoga teacher, you can just be a yoga teacher whenever you want. Like you can say that. Like I did a full training and everything, but there's no legal regulation for it at all.
There's no licensing board or governing force of most wellness careers that are not massage therapy or chiropractic. Like being a doula, being a yoga teacher, basically everything that I am at this point in my life, none of it has a governing force or a state board test.
Yeah. Although I will say one thing, being a massage therapist did help me out a lot with rope work.
Oh yeah, fuck yeah.
Because like I do clinical post surgery massage is my like go-to thing. But before that, I was reintroducing healthy touch to sexual assault survivors,
Mm-hmm.
working with that whole trauma response there. But it made me really, really attuned to like how people are interacting in scenes, and I'm like I can read those situations really quickly. And the best part about it is I know where all the major arteries are.
Mm-hmm.
I know when a tie is going to be possibly injurious for someone.
Yes, and I think it just helps reading the body. Like this is why I think that for people who are not in the wellness space, there's so much crossover that people just get so confused with like everyone's a yoga teacher and everyone's a doula and everyone's a massage therapist and everyone's and it's just like they see so much crossover. It's because they all work so well together, and a lot of these skill sets feed into so many different places. And a lot of the most powerful kink and specifically rope educators that I experienced when I first came into the space were people who had anatomical knowledge and just also energetic knowledge of reading the body. And that's what I would say, that even as someone who is still learning and is still at the beginning of my own journey, is something that I'm still merging as well with like yoga education, of just like the fact that I can walk into a class and read bodies from the second I walk in, and like translating that lens to the rope space.
And having that like internal fake grounded moment that you can pull out whenever you need it in a scene, when you're just like, oh, that was a hard limit I didn't know that I had.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to very politely say, I'm sorry, but I'm calling red.
Yeah. You're like, this is a new version of myself. I see that all the time, whether it's a hard limit or it's something that I liked or it's something that I didn't know I could do. I see those moments every time I engage in any type of play with anyone, where it's like, oh, there's an emotion I forgot that I had, or there's a feeling I forgot that I had for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely a mood.
And we have like 10 minutes left, so I want you to just be able to chatter and use this time to not only communicate any stories that you might have, but also to chat more about your training in general, or to chat more about kink or rope or anything that is on your mind.
Just got a long comment on Instagram.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I agree. And I think that that's what's causing a lot of us to be uplifted right now. If I'm being honest, a lot of us feel very uplifted and very supported, because I think it's all of us supporting each other. And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, I will also say that, at least for me specifically, and this could just be the circles that I run in, but like at the beginning of the Rona times, I had like 5 or 6 people a day reaching out and being like, how can I support you? Can I just like prepay for 10 massages? Or do you need me to Venmo you some money? Are you like, is your rent good? Do you have groceries? Like, it's been consistently like that was consistently like that for like the first 2 months, and that's tapered off a lot. But at the same time, like, it's really nice to be able to like lean into those spaces. And a lot of those people that were reaching out were fairly well employed white people who work in tech and are working from home and are still getting paychecks.
Absolutely. And I think that's I think the thing that shouldn't be going away, and we need to make sure is not a trend, is the support, is that, you know, being heard and also being financially supported. And so many people who are like, but why is money so important? And it's because we live in the West, and because we all need to eat, and because we live in a capitalist society. That's why wealth redistribution is so important. But I do think that it also has to do with just support in general, and just knowing that you're heard and people are like listening, and that a lot of people that are living within the margins are using this time to be like, wow, people are actually listening. I have to talk, and I've got to get out there, and I've got to do lives, and I've got to do trainings, because this is a moment where people are paying attention and also realizing, and collectively realizing, how important this information is.
And also, this is a great time to build God, my brain can't remember the English word.
I hate when that happens.
Reputation. Sorry, English is not my first language.
Yeah.
I'm completely deaf in this year, and fairly deaf in this year. So ASL is my primary language as well, which is fun during rope work, by the way. Having to keep like hand movements in mind for accommodation on ties.
Mm-hmm. I don't know why we haven't talked about this. Is also, I feel like Kim might possibly be in this room and be like yelling at me, because I don't know why I haven't connected you with some of the ASL members of the rope community here in Austin, who have specifically been aiming at creating content in a more accessible way, like rope education content, but also like creating accessible play and rope experience for people who specifically need ASL to be able to communicate, understand, or who specifically want to use ASL in scenes to communicate, because even though they might have another language under their belt in some way, they would prefer to be speaking in that mode in ASL or in that space. So
yeah, because especially in rope situations, if someone gets triggered by something they weren't expecting, they can go, I'm going to go into polyvagal theory for a minute.
Of course you're going to go into polyvagal theory for a minute. Let's get all the bagels.
Yes. They're going to go into full ventral vagal response and not be able to be verbal. Like, they'll still want to communicate and want to be able to talk, but they physiologically will not be able to speak.
Yeah. Which we do speak about a lot, I think, in especially in the rope space, just going nonverbal in general, or understanding how you process, and whether that's verbal, but not just processing sensation, how you process your own trauma and how you process triggers as well, and how they're expressed in you. And yeah. Oh, yay. I'm glad you found your way to this live. Thanks to Kyra. And I also just love this person in the chat whose name is Protozoa, because I definitely watched all the Xenons last weekend on Disney Plus. So, yeah, I'm about that life. So when I saw that name, I was like, oh my God, Protozoa, who are you? I just love that. I think that's amazing.
Do you know who Dorian Electra is? Am I saying that right?
I don't know, because I was like, that it sounds a little familiar, but I don't know if I'm messing that up. I'm gonna say no because I'm doubtful. So correct me if I do.
Do not apologize for spamming. We love your presence here.
Yes. Let's say we love all the presence here. Your presence is a gift.
Yeah, Dorian Electra. They're a non-binary musician from Houston.
Oh, yes. Didn't we talk about them in a meeting? Did we bring...
I think I might have brought up their song Man to Man just because of all of the wonderful queer, gay, trans feels in that song.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And that's another resource for everybody. That's the homework. That's the homework after this live, is to sign up for Trans 101 and to listen to Dorian Electra from H.
And something at least you and I have talked about a little bit in Transforming Wellness is doing a trans literacy for sex workers in kink situations.
Yes. Which needs to happen. We need to write that. Like. Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. Like tomorrow.
It's like norm to the kink parties. Explain things to people and be like, to just talk about the nuances of gender with someone where you're like, I want you to tie me up and gag me, but I need you to understand all this other stuff about me.
Yes.
So that you can do it correctly.
Yes. And so that I can actually feel like it's a, like, as we talked about in the training, not safe space, but brave space for me. And the fact that there always seems to feel like, once again, the labor's on you, of the fact that there's all of this stuff that you feel you need to explain that you wish you didn't have to, because it pulls you out of that space of even wanting to engage like that with someone.
You should never expect someone who's oppressed to educate the oppressor.
Mm-hmm. But that's what ends up happening most of the time. If you're in a dungeon and you're like, hey, I would really love, and you care about the person, you like the person, but you know that they are not, like, they have no knowledge of anything in depth about you, and that you would have to go through a myriad of conversations and, you know, just in-depth conversations and effort to have an experience where you can feel confident that it would be enjoyable to you on a deep emotional level. And that's a lot.
So my response to that is, come take trainings. Pay me to do the education for you. I will.
Yeah.
I am more than happy to do that.
Absolutely. And it needs to happen.
We can all have fun.
Mm-hmm.
I can pay my rent. I can maybe go eat sushi depending on how good the class is. Like,
yeah, I think that's the key, is that take this class, take Transforming Wellness next time we do it, but also take Trans 101. It's going to be like a nice little taste, and it's going to be so incredibly informative. And I highly, highly, highly suggest that you pass this around, this rope community, this kink community. Y'all are going to see me posting it both on here and on Shakti Bliss Bunny. You're going to see me spamming it for the next couple of days. Keep reposting it. Tell people about it. There are so many kink educators in general that need this education as well, as they're leading virtual spaces, and when we eventually, you know, come back into the world next year at some point. And so this is the time. Yes. let's go and let's go to this training. And we have like 3 minutes left on IG. I feel like if there's anything left that you want to say as we wrap up here, specifically on this platform, or if we feel that we're wrapping up in general, any last words, Kyra?
If you can't come to the training, but you do have access to the Austin Public Library, this book. Everything you ever wanted to know about trans, but were too afraid to ask.
Yes. Is that the Austin Public Library, you said?
Yeah, they have copies of this in stock. Most libraries do, actually. This is my favorite recommendation for books. Because, again, don't expect people that you're actively or not so actively oppressing to educate you. Yes. Unless you're paying them.
Yes. And if you, please go to Venmo Kyra. Like, honestly, everybody should be in there right now. If you're watching the replay later, Venmo Kyra, and send that love. The space is not taken for granted, and I'm super grateful that you came and shared space with me here today on this. And I know you'll be back because there's so much more we have to talk about. Y'all only got a tiny taste of all the things, and so there's so much more that we have to chat about. But this is specifically to talk about Trans 101. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to slide in my DMs. You can slide into my DMs, and thank you. But I will answer those DMs specifically. And I'm making my way through all my DMs anyway, but DM me on the Rope Witch specifically, please. And I am happy to answer questions about the trainings, give links, all the things. But with that, yes.
What name do you go by on this page?
Everybody knows all my names, but I'm technically Bliss, okay. Shakti Bliss. Everybody still knows me as Scout. I don't care.
I don't care. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. That was also that's my fuck the code switching bullshit. Fuck that. And I also had all those feels. So yes, I am all the things, but people here usually I just, for my own sake of like staying in my character of being free, of being in control of everything all the time and compartmentalizing, I usually go by Bliss on this page, or B, or any, shortened version of that name, but I really don't mind. I'm not going to be offended if anybody calls me Scout. It happens all the time. But with that, I want to say peace to everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I will be back on Saturday. Oh, just kidding. I left IGTV in general because it kicked me off. But if you're here on Facebook, I want to tell you that I will be back on Saturday with Kitty McSparkles to chat about age play with the intersection of adultification bias, and adultification bias specifically pertaining to Black DDLG age players and Black children in general. So we are going to have a super robust discussion. Until then, Venmo right down here, Venmo Kyra, and sign up for the Transforming Wellness training. It is at transformingwellness.net, Trans 101. Let me know if you need any help with that. Slide into the comments or slide into my DMs. Peace, Kyra. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn off live.